time that my crib had cable. Take my hand, I say, hey, shorty foreign babies. It hurt when you fell from heaven, well, I can't find your head. Last time I seen a shorty like you, my crib had cable. I don't remember yet the last time that my crib had cable. Take my hand, I say, I make music, no label. I get bread, no label. She takes me like baby. Once he saying I'll take it. How could that pussy undertake it? I met a bitch and she from Jamaica. We haven't talked in a long time. I still remember just how I ate you. Beat up the batter like I'm a baker. Skin soldier like I need a baker. Ground time, baby, I ain't no skater. My time, I cannot do the later. I'm a Bobby, her father, she call me Vader. But my heart, yeah, you know, kinda hater. She ain't really want fuck girl, you can't paint it. She in my canvas, I had a painter, oh. Take out them jail like, oh, wow. Boy, nigga, but you in too soft. She sounds so cold, she need two sauce. Jumping in just like a pool now. So hot, baby, I need a cool down. I was hot, boy, you know I'm cool now. Got niggas that hot, but I shoot now. Move saucy, but I got the juice now. Bitch, y'all want like AD. Yeah, I'm pulling nigga AC. Got bitches on me, LADs. Put in work, I'm not lazy. 99 pound like Jay-Z. I'm in the water like waist deep. Chosen gotta be safety. Fat cake, give me that cake. Shorty for a beta. Did it hurt when you fell from heaven? Well, I can't find your halo. Last time I seen a shorty like you, my crib had cable. I don't remember yet the last time that my crib had cable. Take my hand, I say, hey, shorty for.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm back here with the Circle Club. I'm Matt, coming at you live from Tatooine. We've got Tyrone on a call from Alderaan, and we've got our favorite Marvel expert, Corey, coming live from Vader's Tower. Coming live from the, is this the new What's Next stage? We'll have to see. But how's everybody doing today?
Good. I'm just babysitting the princess. You know, these fucking student loans. Oh, sorry.
Oh my God.
These student loans. Got to get some extra money in. So,
That's
how
ridiculous,
about you?
Man. I thought you guys had a good education plan in Alderaan, but it looks like some Senate policies have changed things. But
yeah.
How are you doing, Corey?
You know, luckily for me, Reva has left the Inquisitors, so I'm actually applying to become one of the new Inquisitors for Vader. I will not be hunting Kenobi, but I am looking for Cal Kestis. So.
There you go.
For some reason, I just don't seem to trust you. There's some sort of Scorpio energy that I'm just not trusting.
It's not me at Mustafar that's giving away those vibes at all. Or...
Yeah,
I mean, it seems pretty in line with the line of work he's trying to get into. But for me, I've kind of taken a more humble approach. I had some, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru were family friends of mine, and they actually put in a call after the breach of their property recently. I figured I'd take a nice little vacation down there, maybe take up some more.
You a real estate guy?
A little bit real estate, security, I kind of the worst.
Yeah.
But,
he was just sick of his neighbors, as you can tell.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But right off the bat here, we're here to talk about the Kenobi season finale, if that wasn't obvious by now. But I'm just gonna share quick thoughts. But for me, I had a great time watching this. How'd you guys feel? Let's start with you, Tyrone.
Yeah, honestly, and I always like to have my perspective be shared. I'm a movie Star Wars guy and Disney Plus Star Wars guy. Don't have that same background on you guys. And honestly, I thought it was fantastic. I really did enjoy it. I was surprised how many people were like upset about it, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, am I missing something? Like, is there some sort of thing? Like, I felt like, they were telling a slow story, but I was like, I don't know, like, you said offline to me, you're like, how much surprise can you have in a story that you know? And I think this is the, like, perfect amount of surprise that you can have. Is like, it's not too much where it's detracting from the original stories, but it's also still kind of, like, letting you want a little bit more, and we'll get into that about if we want a season 2 or not, but I thought that they just did the perfect amount of giving fan service while also not overdoing it. So, yeah, What about you, Corey?
I think we had some discussions earlier on, like similar to like the discussions we have with Marvel, questioning the pacing a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting a little nervous about where it was going to go. This was truly, to me, a great stamp at the end of a series. I thought they wrapped up a lot of stuff. A lot of things fell into place perfectly. We talked offline about the complete story. I think if there's ever a series that pulls it off most of the time, it's going to be Star Wars. When you think about just the original trilogy coming out, and then when we were kids, we're almost reverting back and already kind of understanding like who Darth Vader is, right? Like who Emperor Palpatine was, right? So I think we've had these instances, especially in Star Wars specifically, where we already kind of know what happens in the story, but they find a good way to still tell an original story that fits into that whole mix and give justice, I think, and that's the important thing. Give justice and more depth to those other stories we've already heard about. And for me, that's why I really liked it. I'm not afraid to admit that I shed a couple tears just from pure enjoyment from like my childhood and feeling like they did some of these guys justice with their characters.
Nah, for real. To your point, Tyrone, I think one thing that we've kind of had to take a look at is, you know, allowing this story to kind of be told over the course of multiple weeks. I think like binge culture, and especially with like, you know, the contrast of a show like Stranger Things being out and you being able to kind of binge that entire story like in a weekend. I think the eagerness, I think people failed at tempering their expectations and kind of their patience at like kind of where the story was going to go. These limited series are kind of marketed as a long form movie. So even though there's like moments where there has to be a beginning and an end to an episode, I think like the larger plot needs room to grow. And once you saw a lot of the people complaining ended up immediately backtracking once like episode 5 and 6 came out. So I think like fortunately I found just a lot of like positive discussion over it over the course of the last like 24 hours. But for me, just to quickly add on to everything you guys have said, the fan service served the fans and the story. And I think like that's kind of something that fan service is usually seen as like a derogatory term, but like Star Wars usually does it the best. And I think we were all both surprised and just, I think that there was, and we'll get into some of the details later, but there's some of the character moments were just so heartwarming and heartfelt. And to me, I kind of walk away from this feeling even stronger about a franchise I already loved. And I can't wait to go back and watch the original trilogy. Just so for me, that's what made it so fantastic for me. And I think this is a good place to segue into our main question for the episode for our screening is, you know, is this something you want to see a season 2? Is this something we'd like to go forward with, or has it wrapped up so well that we'd like to kind of end it here? And I like to start off with Corey because we were speaking offline. He's very eager to get his answer out, but would you like to see a season 2 of Kenobi?
So short answer is yes, right? Of course I would want more Ewan McGregor, more Kenobi. Hello there, please and thank you, right? But in the context of how I want it, right? Like I think I lean towards something like a Clone Wars, where I want like these offshoot like missions almost, right? I think this was a great setup first mission. It made a lot of sense. Like the only way Obi-Wan was going to come out of hiding and kind of change his ways is for a Luke or Leia to be in a situation, right? I think we know why it shouldn't be Luke because he's on the farm, right? And the way they leverage Leia to kind of get him into that character mold of an older Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And now he's in that spot where, okay, he has his powers back. He can wield the Force. He can do these things. And I think the area I would like it to go is seeing Kenobi get a little bit more involved with scenarios similar to this underground Jedi railroad in a sense, right? Like, I don't think Obi-Wan is going to ever be that guy that's running things. And I really don't want him to be there. But having him come in for these offshoot, very important things where it's like, yo, we need that guy. Like, we need that guy. Like, LeBron James is on the phone dialing Kyrie right now. Like, yo, man, I only got 2 years left to LA, right? So that's what I would like to see, right? I think
that's so disrespectful.
I think that's though where you can continue his story without doing a disservice to all the other properties at the end of the day, right? And that's where I would like to see it go in that direction.
What about you, Tyrone?
I think I would have probably used more of the Draymond Green crying in the parking lot metaphor there, but, you know, that's no here or there. But, you know, so one thing I want to say real quick is, so Marley said he thinks no, there should be no season 2. Someone just commented. He said Anakin finally getting to tell Obi-Wan the truth really puts that no scream into perspective. I would say this, from my perspective, is, again, just watching the movies and shows, I liked this because it got me to like see a little bit more. There was a discussion I was having online with some people on Twitter, and someone was saying, well, if you want to see more Obi-Wan, go watch Rebels, go watch this, go that. And for me personally, I felt they're two different mediums, and I don't really want to kind of dive into that. I sort of think that I understand that they're all canon and that they're all, you know, it's a continuous story. And I do really appreciate that, actually. I think that's really clever that they did that. But I think there's something about getting to see that performance. It's similar to like anything, right? It's Hamlet, it's Macbeth, it's an adapted book. So to see an adaptation of those cartoons, for me personally, as someone as a movie guy, I don't really mind that. However, I think coming from a Star Wars fan perspective, I think it's almost sort of you have to send people there and let's continue to tell a new story or tell something else. That's why I'm very, very curious to get you guys' perspective on that. But you know, me as a like as a fan of the franchise so far, I would love to see that like play it out. And you know, you guys, when we were speaking about Boba Fett, you spoke so highly about what's his name, the assassin,
Fennec Shand?
Yes, thank you. And like you were like there was so much more there, and I was just like, damn, like it would have been cool to see some of that. But I guess it's sort of like, hey, you want to see that, Tyrone? You got to go watch
Bad
the
Batch.
animations.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing to send fans there, but I think that is something to kind of keep in mind. So I guess in short, my answer is yes and no, even though that's not really the answer you're looking for.
Yeah.
I think one thing I want to add off of what Tyrone said, and I want to let you go, Matt, but I think an element to what you're saying. I think if you're looking for Obi-Wan's story, I think there's enough there through Rebels, through Clone Wars animated series, through all the actual movies he's in. But this is where the other side comes in. I think it kind of goes to the whole Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, right? Like there's a different feeling with Ewan McGregor on screen playing. Like he is Obi-Wan. Like his whole embodiment of the role. Like it's just this different, and that's where kind of like some of the emotion for me came in, is seeing somebody like actually Anakin in that moment saying those things, seeing Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor say those things, watching how the light reflects off their eyeballs and their expressions.
Oh my God, seeing Ewan almost cry in that scene was just, it gives me chills. It's so heart-wrenching.
That was a top 5 moment.
I sadly couldn't cry, but just to see in the level of acting that Ewan was able to emote during this entire series, and from the harsh moments with Anakin to the tender, sweet moments with Leia, who we'll get into later because she's phenomenal.
And I think to that point, right, and I'll use Rebels as an example here, right? Like Rebels, people who have watched Rebels see the comparison between the scene with Obi-Wan in this last episode and Ahsoka fighting Vader and them slashing the helmet. And both were equally amazing scenes. Like to me, that was one of the best Rebel scenes. But did it have the same impact as the scene that I watched in live action? It doesn't really come close, right? I think you get way more of that emotional attachment out of it. So that's where I say I would love to see more. I think if you're asking me to be unbiased, I think there's enough of an Obi-Wan story there to, in theory, leave it alone.
I think.
Matt, before you answer, I want to ask you a question specifically.
Okay. Can I quickly tack on to just
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Adding on to that as well, the Clone Wars has been great with Kenobi kind of expanding upon the character, but after seeing this series, like James Arnold Taylor does this fantastic job of trying to embody Ewan McGregor, but it isn't Ewan McGregor, and that's just kind of another thing that I picked up while going back to them. Go ahead, Tyrone.
So I wanted to ask you a question because you're a big Star Wars fan, and like for those of you guys don't know, Matt and I've known each other since we were like 7, and like this man is like he. When I think of Star Wars, like and something's going down, or if someone's like, "Yo, I need a ticket to like I got one ticket," I'm like, I gotta give it to him just because like I just know that like this guy is like Corey is like literally the only other person I can think of who is like a sicko about this, and I'm just curious to you as like such a deep fan, like, and I know that you do like the Clone Wars, Rebels, and Batch and all this stuff. Like, do you think it takes away from those projects for us to get a live action version of those? Because for me, as someone who likes book adaptations or like, see a TV show go into a movie or vice versa, I like it because I think as long as they're doing something slightly different with it or giving us a little bit more. But
I think it's difficult. It's difficult, especially going back to a lot of the failed times that people tried to adapt. I think Disney's been obsessed with adapting animated things into live action as of late. It's tough because the moment isn't always going to feel the same way. The moment predicates on you knowing the previous moment. What I think what Star Wars has done a better job at is actually calling back to those moments in a new context and being able to have this moment exist within itself, but then you tie back to the previous moment. Like in the moment, we can talk about it directly. When Anakin and Obi-Wan face each other in this episode, Obi-Wan says, "I will do what I must," and ignites his saber, which is a direct callback to his line on Mustafar before he duels Anakin for the first time. And then Anakin says, "You will try," but Vader at this moment says, "Then you will die," which is a direct line from the Twilight of the Apprentice episode in Rebels where he faces Ahsoka. So like that moment, I'm getting chills talking about it because it ties to two emotionally charged moments. So I think that's where I'd rather see moments like that than see them try to recreate beat for beat a scene from an animated show. I think like that medium is beautiful and exists in itself. It would be super dope and it'd be super greedy of me. Like I would totally like to see a recreation of Obi-Wan killing Darth Maul under the twin suns from that scene in Rebels, seeing a recreation of that. But I think that moment kind of, it diminishes that moment.
So what about, go ahead, Corey.
I was gonna say, and then I'll keep it quick here, but this is where the problem with animation comes in. I think animation is always going to be certain individuals' cup of tea, and other individuals are just not about it, right? So I think the greatest thing about Star Wars animation, specifically Clone Wars series and Rebels, is it's a great filler, right? Like if you are loving the movies, you're loving these TV shows, and you're like, dude, I need more. Like, I need more content. You will watch these and you will be thoroughly enjoyed, right? But I think it's hard for individuals to jump into animation, especially if they are not an animation type of person, right? I think a lot of people hear animation, they think of like anime, right? And like Naruto and things like that. And they're all kind of in the same category, so to speak. But the great thing about this anime series in the both of them is it not only gives you more of that context behind some of these characters, but more so a lot more context behind how Star Wars works, how the Force works. So I think you almost need to go to those after watching the movies so that you can get more of that. They did this there, they did that there, and then you're gonna start picking up a lot more of those connections within the movies. So it really comes down to it's a certain person's cup of tea. It goes back to my point of saying like technically they've gotten everything out there for Obi-Wan, but the problem with that is your whole audience isn't watching Clone Wars and Rebels.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want
to the point you want to make. Try and make it quickly. I haven't been able to talk about if I want a season 2 yet, so I want to.
I was gonna get to that. So, what I was just going to say there is, I think that to your point, Matt, and this will let you kind of go full circle with it. I think them having those little flashback moments and things like that. I think that's sort of where they can do some of those recreation moments where it's like they flash back to something that happened in Rebels or Bad Batch that others haven't seen, but it's a live action. I think if you do it in like bits and parts, I think people who like those series will be like, oh shoot, we're really getting to see this live action. That's fire, but it's not the whole thing. And it also gives us context for like who haven't seen those animation. So and to kind of lead into you, Matt, like I don't know if you have any thoughts on that and just what you think about a potential season 2.
Yeah, man, it's really tough for me. It's something I've mulled over a lot in the last like couple of days and kind of leading up to the finale. It's really difficult because I want to be selfish. So I really do want more. Just I remember it's crazy. I remember where I was when I heard Ewan McGregor was coming back as Obi-Wan, as I was going up an escalator in Copley Square before a work day, and I was like, holy crap. I'm like, it's actually happening. And for it to, and just to be so blessed to see him again, take up the mantle of the character, and for him to do it so brilliantly, you know, I can't help but want more, especially after seeing Qui-Gon. Seeing Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon was beautiful, and it brought tears to many people's eyes. But one thing I must remember, you know, in my teachings at the old Jedi temples was that, you know, attachment, you know, is dangerous. Becoming too attached to something.
How did I know he was going to go in this direction?
Can lead you down a path of darkness and resentment. And I think in those words of my great grandmaster Yoda, I must allow the Force to take the direction it chooses. And I think now would be a wonderful period to just let this chapter come to a close.
It's, you know, it's funny. You saying that, honestly...
You need to unleash the dark side, Matt. Give it into your
I was gonna say, honestly, you saying that, Matt, has almost 180 to me to be like, we need to see more Obi-Wan. Because now I feel like to what you just said, I remember like just thinking like, this is gonna get botched. They're not gonna do it right. Then people are gonna, you know, poo-poo on the prequels, and they just executed it so well. I think it just has to be gentle, right? It's like Ewan McGregor said himself. He's like, I'm willing to come back. It just has to be done right in the proper story. And I think anyone who thinks that they wouldn't, maybe we don't need a season 2, but maybe we do still need his insertion in other stories, right? I think that is something that I can agree with. There's a heavy desire for. I almost feel like letting Obi-Wan be its own series, Darth Vader being its own series, Leia, whoever, like that's fine to give us more of those OG characters and like, you know, where they were at a specific time or something was going on. But I don't think we shouldn't, you're right. I don't think we need to kind of, Obi-Wan season 2 doesn't need to happen, but we need more Ewan McGregor.
You got to use it like Luke in Mando, right? Like spotty, inject them in different spots. When you have them, you get the wow moment every single time because you're like, wow, Obi-Wan, yay, right? But I think to your point, there's not really much, because if you really think about Rebels, like when he interacts with Ezra and Ezra's like, Obi-Wan, we need you, we literally, you have to get involved, you have to help the rebels, and he's like, this is not where you're supposed to be, Ezra Bridger, right? Like, this is not my fight. This is where I'm supposed to be, right? So I think a lot of what happens in between here, right, is obviously Obi-Wan's continued journey into becoming even more of a master. One of the examples of that is that journey that Yoda ends up going on in Clone Wars, is how they become a Force ghost. So I think to our point before, like, you can get a lot of the context for some of these things by going back, watching the animated series. I think somebody that I prefer, and we kind of just alluded to it, I would much rather have a series for. If I had to pick between Obi-Wan and this individual, I have to take a Vader series, because Vader to me is going to have way more leeway in what he's doing. He's going to have way more of those one-off missions, and I think the way they end it in Obi-Wan almost sets that up, where Emperor Palpatine's like, I need you to basically forget about Obi-Wan. Like, you are my lapdog. You go where I tell you to go. You don't go where you want to go.
That'd be an incredible way to expand upon the story of, like, because Anakin, we've really just kind of pulled the curtain back and showed still how complex of a character he is. The battle between Vader, the concept that Vader is Anakin, that they are not two separate people. No matter how much he tries to compensate and create this idea that he is dead, it's because he believes he's dead, because he's so ridden with the guilt over his own torment and decisions. So to see him kind of what does Vader look like after these events, after almost being embarrassed by Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And how does that fuel his rage towards, you know,
becoming the
galaxy.
becoming the master. And this is
That
where I was
too.
going to go with it. Like, we have now seen the evolution on screen of how Obi-Wan goes from Obi-Wan in Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith, to this defeated Jedi, to back to where Obi-Wan should be, right? Technically, with Vader, we still have this gap between him being the learner, not learning his lesson, and getting to A New Hope and being more so a master.
Exactly.
Right? We have a lot of gap there. So I would love to see that journey in Vader becoming even more stronger, eliminating some of those weaknesses for him, right? I think you bring up a point like Anakin's never gone, because we know Anakin ends up being the reason why he comes back and defeats Vader at the end, right?
Yeah.
Anakin ends up coming back through. But I think I would love to see more of that journey in Vader becoming that master, because clearly, as of this moment, he is not full force Vader that we know he can be. Even though they visually have given us some of those aspects, he can take it a step further, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I would rather us go in this direction.
Yeah, for me, it's more like I would love to see more Obi-Wan, especially at the point with Qui-Gon being reintroduced. But when it comes to the idea of Obi-Wan season 2, the things I would like to see them do aren't really conducive towards like a character arc that has to take place over a season. It's more of like tiny touch point moments that wouldn't really make for the best television in regards to like an actual realized story. It's more so just kind of like, I like an anthology thing of like an episode where he just communes with Qui-Gon, just because of like Qui-Gon Jinn is also such an amazing character that is so underrated because of how he burnt so bright and then was snuffed out so quickly. And Liam Neeson was so fantastic as Qui-Gon. So I would love to, I dream of seeing them in another capacity. Like even just hearing Liam Neeson say Obi-Wan, like the way he says it, and just
like, I was always here.
It's beautiful.
I was always here.
Yeah, I think that's why it makes the most sense to kind of have those flashback moments and insertions and other stories. I want to ask you both one question. So my friend Marley Loves Film, he sort of proposed this idea, and I think this is a fantastic idea personally to get people into the animation, is what do you guys think about Pixar and Star Wars kind of making something together? It's solely Star Wars, so it's not going to be a Pixar movie, but they use their animation studio because obviously they're the best of the best. Like, would that be something that you'd be interested in seeing, where that studio tries to kind of get people fired up a little bit about the animated series?
Yeah, I think an animated Star Wars movie could be cool. They've only ever really done it with the Clone Wars, and that at the time the animation turned a lot of people off because of it wasn't really the best. But I think like an anthology story, or like a contained story, and it doesn't even have to be contained, but something that is so far out there at another corner of the galaxy. Like I could see a droid love story being done by Pixar.
Well, I wasn't even thinking like that. I was thinking more like, you know, forget the whole family and all that stuff. Like, we've never seen Pixar actually just like be rented almost from like a different studio.
Yeah, like they have their original. Yeah, they usually just have their original stories. This would be my answer. My answer is no, and I'll tell you exactly why.
Okay.
I think, going off of what Matt said, if some problems that I know from people that I've told that are Star Wars fans to get into Clone Wars animated series, right? They always tell me like, dude, I really can't get into it. Like the graphics, it's too childish for me. But if you have watched Clone Wars and you see where Rebels goes, and then you see Bad Batch, but also just the last season of Clone Wars that they ended up doing when Disney took over, the animation at this point for what they're doing, right? Like just go to Bad Batch. Bad Batch is a great example. The animation is on point.
It's
really
remarkable.
It's remarkably good. Like when they have their like traveling in space scenes, it looks verbatim just like what you see in these movies.
Dude,
right?
the lighting is just nuts. Like, I reacted. You can check out on our channel. I reacted to the season 2 teaser trailer, and it's gorgeous looking.
Very good. I saw it too. It's very nice. So I wouldn't even want a Pixar version of it. Like I would rather give me the Star Wars taste animation that you've been doing with like last season of Clone Wars, Bad Batch, that area. If they want to take it a step further, you already know how it works with these animation studios. You just fund them a little bit more, and you're gonna get even better graphics out of it. So that being said, if you want to up the project, I think with that added money could make it even better than I think it already.
That's actually a really good point. Where the movie budget could be crazy because the final arc of the Clone Wars show, The Siege of Mandalore, uses mocap for lightsaber fights, and it is like. It's damn near movie quality.
Ahsoka and Maul fight in that season, Matt.
Incredible. It was incredible.
I just really think though, like animation and style, like I mean, Pixar is the creme de la creme. It really is the biggest of the big, and I think like I guess it's sort of a question of like how, because we kept saying that people really weren't. It's not their thing, whatever. I'm just wondering if that's a way to bring people into that, because it's sort of like Marvel, like. When you have a big event like Endgame, Infinity War, whatever, it's gonna make people want to go backwards, and then they'll start to appreciate it. So that just kind of ran in my head. But here's
my counterpoint to that. I'm gonna use Buzz Lightyear as an example.
Oh gosh,
just recently came out. You think about Pixar, right? All original stories. Technically, Toy Story is their story, right? But it's kind of like a spin-off, right? It almost feels like. It's a little apples to oranges because again, Toy Story is their story, but it feels like a rented version, right? Like they're kind of doing this own thing. I feel like Star Wars would fall into that similar context as Lightyear, and if we, you know me, I love talking about the business side as well. I might be a nerd, but I love talking dollars. Lightyear was projected to make, I think, $85 million opening weekend, and did not flop, but made a lot less money.
Yeah.
So Lightyear is way different to me.
I think the only thing,
Pixar though. I just want to say this one point, and then we got to move on to the next. Star Wars and Pixar, just off of name recognition, will do like 100 million first opening.
Yeah,
like just that alone, just the name.
Lightyear's different though, because no one. I mean, it's like it isn't even Buzz Lightyear. That's the thing. It's not even really Toy Story either.
No. So it's I think that their issue is that they kind of took a character's name and then didn't actually have the character in it.
Right.
That's the kind of things we're doing. But for the next point,
I would also argue it doesn't matter what you're putting out there for Star Wars. You throw Star Wars in the title, it's making 100 mil opening weekend.
Exactly. So I don't think that there's any chance of it failing with Pixar. But
I think it would come down to preference, though. Like,
that's fine.
I guess a better question is to Matt. Matt, would you prefer Pixar animation versus animation at a higher budget from like a bad
last point here, I'm more used to the Clone Wars animation, but that won't stop me from exploring what Pixar animation would look like. And with that being said, we got to move on. We kind of stuck on this for a little bit, but the next point we want to get to with talking about where Star Wars goes next with this Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I think a big question to be asked is like, what do we expect from Reva going forward? Or what would we like to see from Reva? Because that's a character that coming into this, I thought she was going to be tied up at the end and just killed along with like some other Inquisitors. But for her to have a redemption arc at the end and us kind of not really know where she's going to go, like that's something we've never really seen before. So what are your guys' thoughts in regards to Reva?
I'll tell you, let me tell you something. If Rian Johnson is involved, then I guarantee you we're going to get the fucking offspring of Finn or some nonsense. But God. I just think, she's taken such a beating, and I don't care. I'll be the black guy to say it. Like, the way people have treated her, and and the response was great. I think I feel like fans don't understand who they have in front of them, and I'm telling you, like the work she put in Queen's Gambit, like everyone was down for it. I think she's like probably going to be a little turned off at this point from the Star Wars. And one of my concerns or issues I always have with Star Wars in general is because the time jump from like sequels, originals, prequels, they're all over the place. You do sometimes it makes you think like if you start exploring with Reva too much, it's going to be like, well, where was she during this part? Or where was she during the sequel trilogy? And so, to me, it's almost like you have to put her on the opposite side of the galaxy, or she's doing something else. And at that point, it's like, you're going to start to get this criticism from fans. They're like, oh, this isn't really in the Star Wars universe, and I think that's going to be a big thing we see with the Taika Waititi series
I think,
as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing I say to that is Star Wars already has done a lot of that with characters like Ahsoka, Ezra Bridger that they've introduced, and that hasn't. Those characters have still been fan favorites. And I think there's an interesting direction that can be taken
because they have orange paint on their faces.
Oh yeah, I get that. I get that. The thing is that there are rumors that they are in the works of creating a spin-off series of some capacity with Reva. I'm predicting it's probably going to get reviewed. I'd be interested in it. I think more so now than I was a day ago. But it's going to get review bombed to shit because Star Wars fans suck when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes.
Some Star Wars
some
fans.
Of them, yes. Some Star Wars fans suck. But people are also suggesting, because rumors have been having a Cal Kestis show coming to Disney Plus, maybe those characters kind of meet each other because they're going to be around the same timeline as the upcoming game Jedi Survivor. I just think like her performance, I think at the beginning people were kind of confused. They didn't give the character the chance. She's very loud, angry, and like you get a sense that she's actually overcompensating for this kind of dark side, angry behavior. And also, Inquisitors are just shitty bitch ass people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so it's like that's why I'm like, to me, that's why it's like when you use these terms for black women, it like kind of pisses me off a little bit because I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's what she's supposed to be. It's a fucking Grand Inquisitor. You know,
the Inquisitors are just little snooty little assholes.
I would say this is where I'm at with Reva. I'm going to go back to an earlier point that I made with Obi-Wan, right? We kind of alluded to Obi-Wan, right? Like has the story already told. I kind of alluded to where I would like to see it go if they were to do more, right? I think realistically that pathway might be possible with Reva, right? She knows about that Underground Railroad situation with the Jedi, right? Like she's flipped from the dark side to the good side, right? Like she's in this redemption mode clearly where she doesn't want to be on the dark side. She wants to help people, right? Like she voices multiple times like I could have helped them. I was too weak, right? Like now you're not weak. Like what are you gonna do now? And I think to the point that Matt was talking about, like first off, Star Wars is so big. It's a whole galaxy, right? So it's easy to have people in different places. And I think something that they had established back in the day was that all the Jedi died, right? But clearly all the Jedi haven't died. There's some people still lingering out there. The reason why Luke was involved was because Luke is that guy. He's the head honcho, right? They needed him. He's the main protagonist. But like all these other characters can be doing things like I'm going to use my Marvel references, like a Captain Marvel. You can have Reva out there doing her own little thing while there's other missions going on, similar to how Ezra was doing his own thing, working with the rebels before Luke even came in there, right? So
I think there's a lot of avenues for these characters to impact the galaxy. I think what's interesting is when shows like Rebels came out and like Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger and Ahsoka were like brought back and introduced, I was afraid that it kind of it minimized Luke's efforts, of Luke's kind of the impact he had as like this last Jedi, as the lone Jedi to stop the Emperor and stop Darth Vader, or to redeem Anakin Skywalker. But actually, in reality, it only makes his impact more important, because out of all these people, like Quinlan Vos and all these other Jedi that may have survived, even though there are people amidst the Force, and the light never truly dies, they're out there. Only Luke Skywalker, the son of the Chosen One, was powerful enough to turn Anakin back to the light side and save the galaxy. Until, the sequels fucked it up. But we're not going to talk about that. So I think that there is room for a character like Reva to be out in the galaxy, not having to do these grandiose big deeds or anything, but just making change in small places. And I think like Star Wars, it started off in The Mandalorian with a small contained story of a gunslinger just kind of going out of his way to save a child or to help a child. And it got bigger as we went along, and that's going to get huge. And I think that's something Star Wars tends to do. It tends to inflate itself. But I think like what we're kind of missing at the moment are like these small contained stories of just people that follow the light doing good across the galaxy. Reva doesn't need to destroy an entire star system or to one man an army. But I think like where Obi-Wan's story is ended in like kind of a nice way, it's kind of tied up, Reva's has just begun. And to have such a complex story of a character that was out of pain that they suffered, feeling that they weren't strong enough to save their friends, to kind of take on this journey of revenge and to never truly fall to the she fell to the dark side, but to never truly take that plunge into because we even saw before, we talked about last time, she's wincing at seeing Vader kill children or kill young people in that town in episode 3. She never fully committed to that evil. And for her to have this moment where shout out to Moses Ingram for such a remarkable performance. It gave me chills every time I watch it, of her crying, saying I wasn't strong enough, or like I was too weak to save them, or to say like, have I become him? And then for Obi-Wan to tell her, you have chosen not to. And like that, and the biggest drive, that's why it's so annoying. Like, anybody that's like angry about this character is missing the point of Star Wars and the point of like choice and choosing your destiny, and how hope and just the good in one can change someone and kind of lead them on a path for good, and how that can change the galaxy.
I think you bring up one point too that's so overlooked in everything that you just said, is that Star Wars, although it's such a big universe, is so easily able to have these stories somehow just intertwine, right? Like you think about someone as simple as Hondo Ohnaka, right? Like just a side character that you enjoy, was always interacting with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin in Clone Wars, and all of a sudden, like, he just somehow crosses paths with Ezra in the Rebels. And like, it's little things like that that really make Star Wars so enjoyable. And again, here's my Marvel reference. But like how Marvel does their MCU and interconnecting things, where like not everything has to be this big thing, this big story. They can have these little side missions and side quests in smaller entities. You can leave the big stories for the movies where you probably want to leave those stories, right?
Right.
But you can get your wow moments and those big moments by these small little injections. A Luke in Mando, a Qui-Gon popping up in Obi-Wan, right? Just these small little intertwined references is really all most people truly are looking for at the end of the day.
I'm going to make one final quick point, and before we start to wrap this up, I think television, the best use for television, and when you think about the best shows of all time, you know, shows that have really big impact, they're about character development. They're about taking this character. Like, I think that, like, a perfect opportunity, like you said, Matt, is this character where it's sort of started and ended right now, is we don't know much about her or where it's going. So to take that and let us know and then let her story end, beautiful way to do it. With a movie, typically American cinema is more about a plot, where we're going, ABC story, you know, a larger overall, you know, if this is movie 1, 2, 3, it's some overall larger arcing story. And I think that, to your point, Corey, that you just leave those there. And, you know, if honestly, to me, there's only certain character movies that American audiences really accept. And really, Obi-Wan is a character movie when you think about it. And but they put it on this platform because Disney Plus, they're trying to make money, commercialism. It gives them a little bit more to play with. But when you really think about it, this is a character movie. But I think they were probably kind of betting on more people to log into Disney Plus than them to go to the movie theaters. So,
100%. But I think overall, like, this show has given us so much and has uplifted so much of what we already love from the series. And honestly, it gives me a lot of faith in the stuff that they're doing going forward. So I just want to wrap this up by saying hats off to Debbie Chow and all those involved. And I think this was a great ride. And if it's the end here, then I am so satisfied. But if this is the beginning of something better, I think we're in for a great treat. So I think this is a good place to.
So final points. I'm going to say I think we should not have a second season of Obi-Wan, but we should still see more of Obi-Wan. And I think we should see some more of Reva as well. Corey, you?
Yeah, I'm gonna follow a similar sentiment. I would like to see more Obi-Wan. Don't think we need a series. Reva, I could see the pathway. Do I need it? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
My final takeaway is just give me more Vader, please. Just
Oh yeah, it was funny because you were saying.
I swear I didn't get paid to say that, even
Yeah,
though
it's
I'm
true.
applying to be
That's
an Inquisitor.
What's funny is that before you were saying that like you were disagreeing with me. I was saying we need a Vader series, and you were like, nah, we need to call back on Vader. So it's funny you coming full.
I'm with you.
Coming around.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah,
yeah,
It's just
I
my,
think
it's just my way to get you to the dark side, Matt.
Yeah,
That's
oh
all right.
God,
I think at the end of the day, all of the stories that they decide, you just got to be careful. And I think that's Corey's sort of hesitancy with the Vader series. That's mine with the series. Is it just you just got to be super super careful about it. But of course, we want to see it.
Exactly, yeah. So I think we're all in agreement here. I think I'd love to see more of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, but I don't think there's enough where he needs to be the next time we see him. I don't think there's enough room for him. I think this was the perfect scenario to kind of get him out and about, and I don't think lightning strikes twice in that regard.
Yeah.
Seeing Vader would be fantastic. There's a lot that they've done in the comics that have been great at his characterization and kind of showing his inner turmoil. It'll be interesting to see like what does a story look like where what does an arc look like within a 6-episode story for Vader happen if we like what does that look like for a dark side character, for an evil character? But overall, I think we got a lot to be excited for and to look forward to. And I'm going to be rewatching the shit out of this episode. So, with that, thanks again, Tyrone, for joining us. Thanks again, Corey, for tuning in before your interview with Vader. And let's all be safe and watch out for any floating space stations. And until then, may the force be with you.
And hey, if this is the last time I see you guys, who knows what happens on this planet? I just want to say it's been an honor working with you.
I'll be back next week to tell you guys about the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. So,
oh jeez, yeah, we'll have to do a read along. But
and if you like Marvel, make sure you check out what's next and check out some of our stuff with Miss Marvel.
Exactly. And so until then, may the force be with you and just be you.
Peace.